It's time to prepare for battle, for in this Kickstarter preview, we are taking a look at AracKhan Wars. In this game, the Grey Order is invading, so it's time to prepare your faction and lead them into battle. You will play against your opponent over 9 rounds, and at the end of that last round, whoever has the most value on the board gains control of the province.
Each player is going to have their own personal deck made up of one color or province of cards, and that can be a pre-built one or one that they have built before the game has begun. First thing you'll do on your turn is draw 2 cards from your deck so that you have a full hand of 7 cards to choose from. And then there is going to be a starting player. That turn order is going to be alternating each round. So the first player is first going to choose 2 of the cards from their hand and place them face down onto the playing field. They have to go adjacent to an existing card. Otherwise, you can put them anywhere you want. Could be adjacent to your own, could be adjacent to an enemy's, anywhere on the field that has another card next to it. Then the other player is going to do the same thing with 2 of their cards. Now, some of those cards could also, in addition to being on the battlefield, go down to the astral plane section of the mat, so they won't necessarily go onto the field, but they will still have an effect on it later on. Once both players have their cards down, then simultaneously they will flip them over and reveal exactly what was played. However, the first player still gets the opportunity to take their turn and activate their cards first, unless some cards have an initiative ability, which allows them to get a little sneak action in before anyone else has the chance to go. Most likely, a lot of the cards in your deck are going to be creature cards. Creatures will have various keywords and abilities, but they will always have in common an attack value and a defense value, which are your primary way of figuring out how they're going to do in combat. So a creature can attack another creature that is adjacent to it, unless it has the ranged keyword that would allow it to perhaps hit something that is a little bit further away. And you're going to compare the creature's attack value to the other creature's defense value. If it is higher than that value, then they are able to defeat the creature and it's removed from the board. If it's not higher or if it's equal to, then nothing happens, no damage will carry over. You either take it out or it is ineffective. Once a creature has been activated for any reason, the little token on top of it is flipped over to show that it has been used and cannot be activated again until the following round. In addition to creatures, there are those spell cards we mentioned earlier, as well as locations that can be activated in similar ways. They're not going to be attacking anything directly usually, but they have their own kinds of features and abilities. Once the first player has finished activating all the cards they can or want to, then the second player will do the same with their cards, and then there's a cleanup phase. You will flip over all the tokens of the used cards so that they are ready again for the next round.
It's important to keep cards on the field because once you've hit the 9th round, you're going to count the number of points you have based on the value in the corners, and whoever has the most wins. So it's all about territory control. Now, the big way you're going to do this, as we said, is those creatures, but the locations and spells are going to help. Locations are like creatures, but if for whatever reason they are able to be defeated, they only have a defense value, no attack value, instead of being removed from the board, the other person captures them. So they become more like King of the Hill spots, where players are going to fight over them for not only for those benefits, but the points they offer. Once a spell is activated, it usually is discarded when it triggers or at the end of the round. So they are there for a temporary benefit. Let's take another quick look at the creatures because they're not simply just a point value. If they are surrounding an enemy, they actually can work together to defeat an enemy that has a higher toughness. So that's a way to get around something that is particularly tough to beat. Cards may also have things like movement or flight. These let them move around the board in a way so you can reposition them however you need. There are also plenty of keywords that give you advantage in attacking. We already mentioned initiative, which lets them trigger even if you're not the first player, or range attack, which, as you can guess, lets you attack non-adjacent cards. But there are some deadly ones like perforation. The way this card works is if it beats the card in front of it, it can take on the next card, though at a weaker attack value. This allows it to chain and take out multiple cards at once. Those point values in the corner are also used for the deck building. You have a certain number of points to allocate, so that is how you decide what cards you can put in or out. There are also some cards, similar to this card, the Ice Golem, which have 2 values. That second value is only used for the deck building. This top value is what's used when you actually play the game. As I said, you will keep going back and forth, trying to gain control of the board until 9 rounds have occurred. The person with the most points wins.
AracKhan Wars is an interesting hybrid of gameplay styles. It's a tactical card game where your cards are your units that you are placing out on the field and arranging them in different positions. That's very, very important. And they're also going to be the units that are holding control for you and gaining points for you the longer you're able to keep them alive. And from what we saw, of course, this is planned to be an ongoing game with more card packs and expansions in the future. So who knows what could change. But from the games that we got the chance to try out, it's not so easy to just go in there and take out a creature all the time. Depending on the makeup of your deck and how much power they have, you might really have to work to position them or get multiple creatures to work together to attack in order to stop your opponent from gaining too much ground.
This really does feel more like a territory control game because, as Jonathan stated, some of those higher defense ones you're only going to be able to take out if you do a group attack against them. Meaning you're probably going to position your own cards next to it, or maybe some of those cards that may increase defense of adjacent cards next to that to sort of buff all your units. Quickly, in terms of deck building, the will come with 4 pre-made decks that are pretty solid and show off. I think what is the idea behind the 4 factions, at least in this first season, I think they're calling it. There's the green one, which seems to be a bit more of what you'd honestly expect from anything that is the nature class. They got a lot of range stuff. We got these blue group that seem to be really about positioning your units with these very nihilistic penguins, which I love, as well as a lot of flyers. Now, red seem to be very much more aggressive, while the gray group seem to be trying to buff each other with units that belong to either like a certain legion or name type. And I'm sure there's much more to come in different customizations. There is no color mixing either, so like I'm going to stick with this color, and that's pretty nice.
Yeah.
Into the gameplay itself, I do really love that the more territory, it's not like there is a lot of killing, but almost it really seems to be like I can lock in this space. I've put enough things around it. It is safe. I've controlled this. I got hopefully a nice 10 points on the board just from the way I have things set up. Of course, you never know if your opponent's going to be able to swoop in with some of those spells or maybe even flying and movements to be like, oh, okay, you're going to be able to do now that the chain attack that can go through everything, and that could be very scary.
It is a very different way of thinking. I had to kind of change my mindset up for this game because unless you have a bunch of cards that have the movement or flight abilities, a lot of your cards are probably just going to be staying on the field where they are until they die. So some of them you might put out early and they might be there throughout the entire game. So their positions can really be crucial. Of course, you may have even some spells and things that will allow you to move things around. There's always ways around it, but things may stay in one place for longer than you expect. And you also can place new cards on the other side of the board, wherever, if there's a card there for you to put it adjacent to. So I know when I started playing, I just kept thinking of like, well, this is my side of the field, but that's really not the way you want to think in order to play the game. You have a lot of different options, and a lot of it is about trying to think, well, this guy is weaker, so maybe I want to place a card in front of him just as a protector to kind of space that out. Or maybe I want to play my initial team of cards in kind of a certain pattern or so that I just have more options later on, so I'm not backed into one corner in particular. The positioning is really, really probably even more important than the cards themselves that you choose to play.
Obviously, you feel really good when you just get that position right. Like, okay, I can do a group attack because I put my ranger over there. Or I put a card here that hopefully should block what you were planning to do because I positioned it, even if it's not like a super strong card. Also, those initiative cards are very interesting, and they're obviously strong because I believe you can only have 5, if I'm recalling correctly, in your deck, regardless, when you do the deck building, because first seemed pretty good, but if you can attack before they can and maybe wipe out a card, that can completely ruin a strategy.
Yeah, then there's those locations, which is also a whole other thing. I mean, those are in every sense of the word territory control. There's no other way around it. So the fact that you can actually take cards and control them that your opponent brought into battle is pretty unique. There's also a couple of legendary cards that are worth a lot that you might try to fit into your deck that are going to be super powerful. And again, more cards in the future, presumably, that we have not experienced. So the game could go in all kinds of different directions. But The foundation is solid if you like these kinds of tactical card games where you have various units and you're moving them around the map in interesting ways, and you like thinking tactically about your position and all that kind of stuff. Plus, you have some wacky spells that you can just kind of throw in wherever you want. Then this is definitely one you might want to look at. And of course, if you're a fan of ongoing deck building games in general.
Right. I think if you're a fan of any, whether it's your TCGs or your LCGs, but you really also like territory and really more about positioning than simply just comboing off or maybe having the most meta deck and that's like casting and killing everything. This is definitely one to take a look at because I think that twist of really putting a lot more emphasis on board control, because in the end, it's points on the field. It's not taking out your opponent. I think this is a game that at least should be one you're checking out. You can check out the Kickstarter right now. We'll have a link below, of course, so you can check that out. Let us know what your thoughts on this are, if you had the chance to maybe see this and preview it somehow, or if you looked at the Kickstarter and you want to let us know what your thoughts on this are. We'd love to hear from you. That's what the comment section right down below there is for.
Absolutely. I believe this one is also available on Tabletop Simulator, so you could even give it a try early and let us know if you're thinking about backing it. My name is Jonathan.
I'm Will.
And this has been a Roll for Crit preview. You know what would be great? If you liked this video and subscribed to our channel to stay tuned for more updates. You could also even go over to our Patreon page and support us there. We'll give you some really cool rewards in exchange for that. Or maybe you want to support us by buying some merch. You can check out our merch store where we are selling t-shirts with cool designs and other things too. Check it out.